Welcome back, Bronson with the Epoxy Resin Store. Thanks for watching our series. This is part 2 on how to build a countertop. All right, what you see me here, right there is where our seam is. So I've got a large board. Now this is the bottom of our countertop. I'm gonna go a good minimum of 6 inches past our seam or more. So it's just a piece of scrap I have. We always have scraps and offcuts from building other projects. I'm just gonna line this up right here, and I'm going really far over our seam. Our seam was only like 3 inches off the end. It looks like I've got about 18 inches there. So I'm gonna clamp this, we're gonna glue it, we're gonna cut the shape out so it fits, and then we've got a nice supported from the underside seam. So I don't worry about the seams too much, where we don't really break it. And after we've got our pocket screws all leveled up and we got it there, we're gonna put this under the bottom. Anytime there's a seam, we're gonna really go both sides of the seam with the MDF and then screw it in nice and tight. You'll see we'll glue and screw it, and away we go. But that's how we support our seams. So when we're moving around the shop or when they go to get installed, we don't have a countertop that breaks at a weak point. Another thing is if you don't support your seams just right, and there's even just a little bit of flex, you'll end up bending a line along that seam. It looks like you took some plastic and you bent it and then put it out straight again. You'll have that crease, it'll never go away. So we've learned over the years to really, really support those seams so they're just rigid and stiff. The rest of the countertop might move, it's okay, because it's MDF and we're not beating it up, but where that seam is, we just want it rigid with no movement, and so that's why we build them this way. Now you'll notice I've left a little gap along the back, and you'll see why I did that, because we're gonna be running some edges through there. But for now, we've just lined up the front and the corner, and I'm using Titebond 1. That's the type of glue we use. It's cheap and it has a really good strength. Once it dries, the strength on it's really good. So we'll put it in place. We're gonna glue and screw our extra bottom piece to the top piece, and then we're gonna let that dry, then we'll end up pulling these screws out. I like to glue, when I'm screwing in my board, I like to get all the edge and then the centers as well. If you don't screw those centers in real tight, sometimes the glue doesn't get pressed as flat, or you'll end up having a spot and you end up with like a little bit of hump in the middle. You don't want that. It doesn't make it good for when you're trying to set your countertops on the cabinetry. There we go. Now I've got some brad nails I'm gonna run through. They're 1.25" brad nails. I'm just gonna nail those all in to help hold that in place until the glue sets. All right, these are the strips that I was telling you about. We use a 2-inch MDF that we've cut to squares, and then we run this around the entire perimeter of our piece underneath. So you're gonna see me measuring these off, cutting them to size, and then we're gonna glue and staple these on the entire length of the project. All right, now that I've got that, what I'll do is I use my finger there to line those edges up, and I'll pop the first screw or first brad nail. The wood's a little flexible, so I'll line it up so it's nice and straight. And then my end, hold that down, 2 in the end, and then we'll just pop a few more brad nails in just to hold that into place. Our real strength doesn't come from the screws or the brad nails at the end. It really comes from the glue once it's all the way dried up. And I'm just making a note right there that you can see it's a 2-inch strip that we cut. So every bit of scrap gets used up in one way or another in our shop. So if you have weird, odd cut shapes, we'll end up as 2-inch trim pieces like you see here. Here I'm gonna butt it up, I'm gonna put my glue on, add my next piece. So I'm just showing you there on my brad nail gun. I use 1.25 inch nails in my gun so that I can go through the bottom piece as well. So I use 2 3/4 inch pieces of MDF, and we stack those together. It gives us 1.5 inches, which is standard countertop height, and it works out perfectly. So just use the 1.25 inch brad nails when you're popping them in. You don't have to worry about going through and repairing stuff on your surface prior to pouring your epoxy. And I'm back at it with the trim pieces. Now these corners, these are kind of interesting. You'll notice all we care about is the front portion. You're gonna see we're gonna add facing to it. So we're not gonna bring it all square and lined up. We just wanna close off that front piece. All right, we're gonna line that up. As you see, you're just touching. I have no concern with that piece there. Grab my brad nailer, and we'll pop that one into place. All right, we're almost done here. All those bottom pieces here, and I'm gonna flip this countertop over. We've got our bottom structure built, and there we go. So now we'll be working on the top for the rest of this. I'm gonna use these sawhorses to support my project underneath as I go. And with that, that wraps up the end of part 2 of how to build a countertop. Hang tight, part 3 is coming right up.